Hey guys, welcome back. Today I wanted to do a progress report on plants I've repotted so far this year, specifically plants that I repotted in this video. It was a sad plant repot where I had, I think, 4 plants that were obviously struggling. In that video, I wanted to take them out and find some miraculously obvious reason why they were so sad. But in that video, I think maybe only one of them, it was very clear because of root rot, or pretty severe root rot, that it was struggling. A couple of other ones, it wasn't very clear. And I was also trying out like a different kind of tree fern soil mixture where it's a lot finer than I normally do it. The particles were a lot finer. It wasn't very chunky, so I wasn't very confident on it. So I told you guys I was going to update you on the repot because everything was just such a big question mark. So this is said update. Plus I pulled a couple of other plants to show you that I repotted this year, but it was off camera, but I wanted to show you how they're doing. So here we go. The first plant in that video was my Carla Wu self. That one was the one that was very obvious. It was a lot of wet rot. There was some dry rot in there. The top growth point had rotted off. The only leaf that remained on that plant was pretty ugly. It was on its way out. And I purposely left a lot of the stem exposed because I knew it would activate a growth point lower down. So I didn't want to bury it under soil. So now it is looking even uglier. But I don't know that I see any root growth. And this one lives directly under my Brina lights in my tent. So there's a lot of algae growth on here. But you can see there is 2 activated growth points. There's one that's further along right here. And then over here, there's a little green one kind of poking out of the stem here. So now that I can see exactly where it's going to grow, I can kind of top it up with a little bit more of the substrate, just so more of the stem gets covered up and hopefully it'll shoot out more roots off to the side, or maybe it just prompt something higher up. So that repot video would have been filmed roughly a month ago. So this is not terrible. There is some progress. It is getting a little bit better. I wish I saw some more root growth in that, but this, at least it's trying to do something. That was probably the saddest plant of that repot. The next plant I did in that video was my Dreamweaver by Necromancer. There was some rot on it, but the majority of the root system should have been enough to sustain the plant. So I was kind of unsure why the top growth point looked like it was dying off. And it had yellowed off its newest leaf, which was quite alarming. So again, I repotted it into that finer tree fern soil mix. And now I can confirm that the top growth point did die off because it has shot out a leaf from a lower down growth point, but it is looking purple and delicious, super round. Yeah, I can probably safely pull this caterpillar off and confirm that the top growth point is indeed dead, which is a shame. I said in that video that it wasn't my intention to make this into multiple plants, so I didn't really want it to activate it. I was like really hoping the top growth point stayed intact, but you know, on the plus side, once this little plant, you can kind of see there's a little root shooting off the side of it. Once it has enough of a root system to sustain itself, I'll remove it, and there's more than enough growth points for this main mother stem to activate something else and be its own plant. So I guess I'll have 2 Dreamweaver Necromancers. In the main pot, it doesn't look like I see any new roots. I can kind of see what I think are old roots in the pot, but yeah, it doesn't look like much progress so far. But again, growth is growth. I wish I saw some more root growth in both of these plants, but at least a leaf is better than nothing. Roots would definitely ease my worry with this plant in particular, because I do not want to lose this plant. If I lost that Carla, it's not the end of the world. I can get another Carla. I have plenty of other Carlas. I only have 1 Dreamweaver by Necromancer, and I'm not going to be able to get another one if this was lost. I know it's probably possible, but it's not the kind of money I want to be spending on plants right now. So I will continue to be diligent about making sure it doesn't dry out. I have a feeling that that's probably the reason why the last top growth point died off, but I can't be sure. I don't think I let this plant dry out, but sometimes when the plant gets too algae ridden on the surface, it's hard to tell when it's dry. So it's entirely possible. So the next 2 ones from that video were kind of strange because they were growing new leaves, but the leaves were shriveling off before they could even fully expand, which has happened to me in the past. And that was years ago before I started using Myco, and I kind of attributed to possibly nutrient lockout, like maybe my pH was too high and the Anthurium weren't getting enough nutrients to fully expand their leaves. I wasn't really feeding them at that point. But ever since I started using Myco, I don't recall that being an issue ever again. provided I was actually like watering the plant. So when it was putting out a new leaf, I wasn't like letting it completely dry out, which can cause new leaves to not develop. So these two were a mystery to me because the root system also looked pretty okay. So anyway, I repotted it into that fluffy tree fern soil mix, and it has put out a new leaf. It is expanding. It's pretty fresh, so it hasn't fully unfurled yet, but it got further along than the last one did that shriveled. Again, roots are not really... Is this a new root? I don't think that's a new root. I think these are all old roots that I see on the side of the pot. The old leaf is still looking as ugly as ever. I did pest treat this in that I sprayed pyrethrin on it to battle mites, because you can kind of see there's a little bit, don't mind the yellow dots, but there's like kind of a white dusty kind of speckling on it. So I just kind of saturated the leaf with it and kind of took a paper towel and pressed it into the leaf and on the back of the leaf and the petiole. So far this leaf is looking okay. It is the top growth point, so this one didn't rot off the apical point. And I do think this one has potential to be quite beautiful, because I've seen ones that Paul has posted from, I think this batch, but his are like massive mother plants. This is bred by Paul, by the way. So we'll see how this leaf expands in the next few weeks, and hopefully we will see some root growth. The last big one we did in that repot was my Mr. Worldwide. It was so strange. It was two or maybe 3 leaves in a row where it would emerge and then never expand and shrivel off, leaving just the petiole. And I was so puzzled because I don't think it fully dried out at any point, and if it did, it wasn't to the point where it was getting dry rot. The root system looked great. It was in a tree fern with some chunky pumice mixed in, which was Matt's mix. Matt's the guy who I got it from, and it wasn't that root bound either. It was pretty full of roots. Like the root system was quite big, but it wasn't so critically root bound that it should have caused problems. So that one still remains a mystery to me, but I repotted it into kind of the next size pot. It was in a 5-inch square pot. I repotted into like, I think this is a 6 or 6.5 inch round pot. It's kind of started rooting. Let me see. Right at the front here, there's some roots, and on the sides here. So strangely enough, this one's the only one that is living in ambient, and it's the one that rooted the fastest. But the happy thing is it put out a leaf, or it was about to put out a leaf actually in that video, and it has expanded. We have a little bit of thrips damage right here, which is so annoying, but I caught it before it became a full-blown outbreak in this room. So everything on that shelf has been treated, but it's just really annoying because this one I really wanted to see like a night and day transformation. I mean, it is in the sense that 2 to 3 leaves in a row didn't expand at all. I repotted it and it expanded magically. I don't really know. I am kind of still, it's kind of still a question mark. All I can really say is that they probably needed just a fresh pot of soil. I don't know what could have been imbalanced in the past pots, but it clearly did the trick for this one. I'm not even fully convinced that it was the bigger pot. I think it just needed some fresh soil. I also feel like for me, this very fine, like you can kind of see how small the perlite is. There's a lot of small perlite in the ProMix high porosity myco mix. I added more perlite on my own and some chunky pumice, but I think for me it's still maybe a little bit too fine for my habits, but I will see. I'll continue to monitor it. I just really wish that I saw root growth in the smaller pots. It's interesting to me that this one that was an ambient rooted out the most, but it's arguable that this one was the least sad out of everyone, even though it was rotting off the roots. But this plant in particular is really robust. It's put out 2 flowers, one here, one here. This caterpillar is not active yet, but this plant is like quite a strong plant. And just genetically speaking, it just wants to keep growing. It wants to keep pushing something all the time. So once this leaf is fully hardened off, I probably will cut off these 2 and wait for the next one to come in. Hopefully thrips free, but I will be treating it again, even though I've verified that there are no live thrips on this leaf, but there could be eggs embedded in there. And hopefully in the next 6 to 8 weeks, we will have a nice big thrips free leaf that is hopefully an upsize from this one, but I do really like the shape of it. It's very triangular. Yeah, I'm just overall quite happy with these plants. Now on to some repots I've done off camera. They were very long overdue. They were looking sad for quite a long time. I just don't have the footage of them from before. I will pull whatever footage I can find of like maybe the last time you saw it when it was already looking pretty sad. So my Mina Hasa had been looking quite sad for maybe going on to 6 months. I was putting off repotting it because I just don't really like repotting big plants. I don't know. Some people prefer it. For me, I like to just tinker with little things and make less of a mess, and then I don't use up my substrate as quickly. It was borderline root bound in that pot, but most importantly, it had like this much stem above the substrate. So it was just looking overall sadder and sadder as time went on. I cut off some old leaves and then it put out a new leaf, and it was kind of underdeveloped. It was a little bit wonky. I will show you in a second. So finally I went on a rampage and I just repotted all these really ugly plants on my ambient shelf. It was, by the way, it was just living up here. So this was the old leaf on the plant when I was repotting it. You can kind of see that this lobe is much less developed than this one, and it grew kind of annoyingly like off to the side, and it was like kind of tilted a weird way. So when it sits like this, it was just kind of a very lopsided looking plant. I finally repotted it into a little bit of a bigger pot. It's not massively bigger, but it is a lot wider, and there is room in this pot for the roots to grow. I did bury the stem a little bit deeper, but as the substrate settle, I can still top it up a little bit more. There's definitely some space up here to add a little bit more soil. So this one was actually done before that sad plant repot. This was done when I had a little bit more, because I can see bark in here, and I didn't have bark in that latest batch of tree fern soil, but it wouldn't have been much longer. It was maybe like 2 weeks earlier than that sad plant repot. So I would estimate this is like a month and a half of settling in, but it did put out a leaf, and it is still really floppy and expanding, but it is looking quite beautiful, and it is tear-free, looking great in ambient. I'm very much looking forward to cutting off this leaf and leaving it with just this one, kind of just pretending like nothing bad ever happened. It is flowering, and there is a little bit of root growth. Where is it? This is the only bit of root growth I can see on the side of the pot, but there was a pretty massive root system in there from before, so I'm just gonna keep on top of the watering. I would say this leaf has maybe like a couple of weeks before it's considering like close to hardened off. So at that point, I'll cut this off. I'll clean up. Actually, I'll just pull off some dead stuff right now. I'll top the pot up with a little bit more substrate so more of the stem can be buried, and maybe it'll shoot out some roots from the top. But it is a vast improvement on the old one. Look how long this petiole is, and so wonky. It must have been behind a plant or something and just reaching for light, but this one's quite a lot more compact. Yeah, it's just coming back to its former glory and back to the plant I once knew and loved. I was so close to getting rid of this. I was very, very close to just throwing it up on Marketplace, but I'm very glad that we gave it another try. Next up, my Fort Sherman Roth Linum by Dress Carla. I don't remember the last time you would have seen it, maybe in my tent cleanup video. So this was the mother plant to a hybrid I did with Charmaine, so the F2 hybrid. We have two from the same seed batch, and we bred them together, and they made babies. I just found out that Charmaine's plant, her mother plant, is just, it's gone. She said it got stem rot like above the substrate. There was just no saving it. There was no viable stem left for, and I don't really know why, which makes me really sad, but makes me want to hold on to at least a few of the babies, and also definitely make sure I don't kill my mother plant. But anyway, since we bred our plant, because my plant was the mother plant, it made berries, and after that it just got really ugly for quite a long time, which is pretty normal for mother plants, especially when they're not the most robust. And I think my plant was possibly on its second or third inflow at that point, so it wasn't super mature. Once again, this is the leaf I had left on it. It was the last leaf. It was kind of small, with a little bit kind of underdeveloped. Again, this one was done around the same time as my Mina Hasa, so in that kind of a little bit chunkier, barky tree fern soil mix. And a few weeks after I repotted, I was seeing root growth, and then pushed out a leaf, and it got so much bigger than I expected. But this is by far the biggest leaf it's ever put out. And surprisingly, it doesn't have any of the blister variegation that was on the mother plant. So just for reference, this is one of the previous leaves around the time that it was bred. Since it was small, it would have a little bit of blister variegation kind of around this area, and it would come and go a little bit, but as it was getting a little bit more mature, it was getting a little bit more consistent with the blister, but never so much that it would completely distort the leaf. So I was pretty surprised that this leaf got so big, but it was probably due to its lack of blister variegation, because if you guys have blister variegated plants, sometimes you'll notice that wherever there's blister, it tends to be a little bit like kind of puckered, or just a little bit tighter in that area, like it's a bit restricted in expansion. I don't really know on like a biological level what's happening with that like twisting of the leaf, but I think this leaf is looking so big and fat and juicy because of the lack of blister variegation. I do think it'll come back. I don't mind that it comes and goes. I don't want it all to be blister variegated. I don't really like blister variegation that much, but when it's very controlled and small amount of it, I don't really mind it. But yeah, this one was quite a comeback for this plant after a long time of looking very sad. And just like this leaf was the top leaf. So small. It was quite a downgrade in size for a little bit. But I also want to show you some of its offspring because I repotted those recently too. I mentioned in a previous video that we were doing like an in-person plant show here in Vancouver. We don't really have big plant shows, but this is probably the biggest kind of specialty houseplant show that we have. Actually, that could be a lie. I don't really know what's going on in Vancouver. I'm very out of touch with events in the city. But what I mean to say, I think is it is currently the one that's happening regularly every year that's more geared towards houseplant hobbyists and enthusiasts. Anyway, me, Jing, and Charmaine were vending there that weekend. Charmaine did a video with like some of the highlights from our booth and booths around us. I also did the Secret Plant Show last year with Jing and Hoffmanni High, and that was very memorable, but it was chaotic because it was so busy, and it was like busy to the point where you're over threshold. This one was just perfect. It was the traffic was at a really manageable pace. People could actually like sit and look around. We could chat with people a bit more without feeling claustrophobic. We were behind a table, so everyone just had space to breathe, and it was just like a million times better. I also met a few of you, which was really, really lovely. So anyway, I repotted some of the hybrid that it was Charmaine, the F2s of this plant. I repotted it prior to the show in the hopes of bringing some. I did sell all of them. No, all but one of them. Charmaine did bring hers as well. Here's the one from the show that didn't sell. And I'm not really surprised because minus the newest leaf, this one's looking pretty, I mean, like it's not boring looking, at least maybe, I mean, I'm not going to call it boring looking, but it wasn't as kind of exaggerated and narrow as the other ones. But this new leaf was only just emerged during the show, so no one could see what it would look like. It was just kind of still like in that rolled up phase. I think people were mainly looking for really, really sharp and elongated and pointy plants from this batch, so this one was not looking like that. But since then, that new leaf has expanded and it's got quite a lot of blister variegation on it. You can kind of see it's all right near to the sinus, and that's kind of what the mother plant was like. It's kind of near to the sinus, it comes and goes. And I could be wrong, but I don't think it showed up on the mother plant until maybe this size or a little bit bigger. There was a little bit of transit damage on the leaf, so I don't know if this one's going to be quite as elongated or if it's exaggerated because there's a little bit of damage. But you can kind of see what I mean about the blister variegation, where it looks just a little bit lopsided because of the blister. Here's another one that didn't come with me to the show, but it also put out a new leaf, and you can kind of see this one has a bit of blister as well. Even though the veins are minimal, a lot of them have quite a lot of red in the very pinstripey little veins. So this one's looking like it's going to be quite pretty as well, but not very elongated. Here's another one that is really sharp. It's got a little bit of a chlorotic look to it. It's looking more chlorotic on camera actually than it does in real life. It's looking actually kind of yellow. It doesn't look yellow in real life. It just looks like there's a little bit of chlorosis here, but the shape of it is looking very dagger-like. Here's another one that's really dagger-like, and I didn't bring it to the show because there's some weird spotting on it, but look how skinny. It's almost like a strap leaf. This is definitely one I'm going to hold on to for a little while. And yeah, other ones I didn't bring to the show because there was a lot of chlorosis. This is part of the reason why I repotted them, because they were in tiny little, let me see, they were 2-inch pots, and they were getting dried out all the time, and the new leaves were yellowing off at an alarming rate, and I just needed to get the nicest ones up potted. And yeah, that's basically the ones I repotted. There's like this one, but I showed you the most interesting looking ones. There's 2, 4, 6, 7 that are up potted. There's a whole bunch that are just floundering in tiny pots that I need to get to. So basically I just need a day where I have nothing to do but listen to podcasts and lock myself in my plant room and repot some seedlings, which I actually love to do, but there's just so much to do around the house in springtime. But at least these are done and I can watch them upsize a little bit. I wanted to not upsize them to a 4-inch pot because they're a little bit harder to ship, but although they will upsize faster, I just want to keep it a little bit manageable for now. In my repot rampage, I also did up a lot of little seedlings. They were clearly not seedlings anymore, but they were potted like seedlings still in tiny little pots. So I up potted them. These are plants that I gotten from friends that were bred by friends, and I was basically entrusted with the opportunity to grow out one of the offspring, and I was not doing a good job of it. So I just repotted a whole bunch of them all at the same time. This one is FTG Self by Carla Wu by Pao and Josh. Their FTG Self is like a very wide flat sinus one. My FTG Self is not a wide sinus one. This is kind of what everyone's looking for. And the Carla Soul Reaper was a plant that I saw at IAS a couple years ago. I thought it was the most beautiful thing. So these two plants were bred together, and my plant has been showing quite a lot of promise in terms of the wide and flat sinus. It's quite wavy, and the newest leaf since repotting it into a 4-inch pot is looking so cool. The sinus is so flat. It's almost completely flat. This is one of those plants where the shape makes everything, because if it was just like a regular heart leaf, I don't think most people would look twice at it, but because the sinus is almost completely flat, there's so much rippling and waving around the edges. It's really delicate in that the petioles are like, do you see how skinny these petioles are? It's so twig-like, and then this like weird long wavy thing coming off the end of it. This is potted in the iteration of tree fern soil that has some bark in it. I do see some roots. You can see how delicate the roots are as well, but I'm absolutely loving how this one's turning out, and I'm very excited to see if this flattening of the sinus persists as it matures. I really hope so, because I think it's going to look so cool once it's a large plant. And the last one is one of my Carla Beavets. I showed you one last video. There's one I didn't show you that was a little bit smaller. I don't think I mentioned this. Did I mention this? I am totally out of Carla Beavets, barring my 3 holdbacks. There's no more. I brought my last one to the plant show. It sold within like the first five minutes or so. And there are a few other people who were asking, and I just don't have any more unless I cut the ones I have or breed it again. But anyway, this one I don't show as often because it's not as big and it doesn't grow as fast. But I did repot it into a 5-inch pot, into the barky version of the mix. See, this is why I am a little bit question mark on whether that fluffy mix with the less chunky components is the one, because this version, a lot more roots. We are seeing leaves at the same rate, but I'm seeing a lot more roots in this barky version. I'm still kind of mulling it over. But anyway, this one was an accidental holdback in that I just threw a random one into my tent and it just kind of missed all the different sales. It just didn't get pulled for sale until eventually it got to a size where I'm like, it's kind of pretty. It's kind of quite elongated, and the veins are so delicate and thin. And this is the first leaf since the repot, and it just is so beautiful. It's so just wispy and elegant, and it's got this blushy pink in the veins. My other 2 holdbacks I also really love, but this one is just the most delicate. It just actually, there's a lot of similarities between this plant and this plant to me, because the petioles are a little bit skinnier. Let me show you in comparison to another one of my holdbacks. This is one that flowered first. It's a lot more Carla-like. It's really beautiful, but it's got a little bit more heft to it. I don't know if you can tell, but the petioles are thicker on this one. This one just feels so delicate and just like a little frail little bird, and it's really, really dark. I'm hoping it's showing up as dark on camera as it is in real life, because this is probably the darkest. Maybe it's lighting, actually. No, they're all dark, but this one is very dark, and it was an accidental holdback, but I'm really glad I held it back, because like the 3 of them are quite different from each other. I'm very glad I repotted all these little plants because they are maturing and it's gonna be a nice growing season. I just started a new job. not new job, a new role this week, and my schedule is getting like a lot more rigid. So I am kind of falling into this new routine now, and I'm really glad we did the secret plant show because I got rid of a whole bunch of plants, and I'm feeling pretty good about my ability to stay on top of things through the hot season because I can actually see all the plants right now. I don't feel like I'm just overrun with plants and things are hiding under other things. For the first time in a while, the quantity of plants I'm feeling quite good about, and I will be kind of selling off a bit more and being very, very selective about breeding. In fact, I don't even know that I'll definitely breed again this year, maybe next year. I think I'll just probably be cutting plants here and there and selling propagations rather than seedlings and just kind of working through the seedlings I have. I don't even know how I got into that topic, but anyway, I'm going to show you this leaf up close. When I made this cross, I really wanted a Carla-like plant, like my own dupe of GPH, because the pollen parent is GPH by BVEP round, and I wanted something that looked like GPH. I really don't think I accomplished that, but when I look at this one, it doesn't look like the Carla Wu oneself. So maybe in a way, this is the closest I got to GPH of my holdbacks. But yeah, I really love this plant. I'm very, very glad I kept it. Anyways, that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you made it this far, if you have any ideas on videos you would like to see in the future, please let me know because like I said, my schedule is very regimented now. I'm working a lot more than I used to. In the last 6 months, I've been doing a lot of update videos because I've been slowly up nursing my collection back to health from a long period of neglect. And if you like those kind of videos, then great. But if you would like to see something different, please let me know in the comments. With that said, I hope you guys are having a lovely day so far. I love you guys so much and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah!